You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast on the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, a proud member of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Skyler Timmons, dressed in my Sunday best as we record, and I'm joined here by my good buddy and partner in crime here, Evan Lang.
I am not dressed in my Sunday best, and for all you know, I'm not even wearing pants.
Ooh.
But you'll never know.
I've been watching a lot of Futurama, so I've got the professor's laughs in my head.
Well, speaking of the professor, after last night's events, a few of us had to go into our angry domes, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
I just watched that episode, I think, on Friday.
Angry dome.
That joke got me more than it should have.
It's a funny joke.
Because the payoff on it is him just in there.
It's like silently stomping around in a big glass dome.
And the reason he goes in there is so stupid. It's such the simplest thing that makes him angry. Futurama is a very underrated show, folks. If you have never watched it,
watch it.
Check it out, because there's a new season coming out, too. Pretty soon.
I just recently have been trying to convince my dad to watch Futurama, because my dad, lover of the old school Simpsons, and, Futurama is, made by a lot of the same people, a lot of, honestly, the smartest writers and creators from the original Simpsons, folks with, like, astrophysics degrees and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's one of the most consistently funny shows that have ever been made, animated wise. Because sitcoms, they usually peter out, like The Simpsons. But Futurama, right up there, along with King of the Hill. Good stuff.
I was never a big fan of King of the Hill.
Oh, man, there's some good stuff in that show, too.
It might be something I need to revisit as an adult.
There's a running joke in my family with my brothers is every year when it's one of our birthdays, we send a 10-hour long YouTube video that's called Bill's Birthday Song, where Bill Dauterive is singing this stupid birthday song to himself on his birthday, and it's just hilarious. It's it's a really dumb clip, but we send that to each other every year and still sing it, as well as quote it constantly. But unfortunately, as always, Evan and I usually end up talking about our old cartoons, especially when I host. I don't know what's up with that. We talk about our old sitcoms. It's probably just to put off the inevitable of talking about the actual Rockies. And we've got a little bit to talk about today. We'll talk about some of the roster shuffling, a big trade that happened, as well as we're going to talk about what happened against the Los Angeles Angels on Saturday, when you're hearing this on Monday. And then in the back end of the show, we'll probably just touch around the league and catch up on our MLB going-ons, since we don't usually do that as often anymore. But let's hop right into it. Evan, the Rockies made their first trade, their first significant trade of the in-season by sending Mike Moustakas over to the Los Angeles Angels for a minor league prospect, Connor Van Suyuk. I don't know how to say his last name yet.
I've been saying it's Skoyuk.
Van Skyuk.
It's spelled Scoyoc. Skoyuk.
Skoyuk. Van
So that's
Skoyuk.
what I've been going with.
We'll stick with that for now. But yeah, minor league prospect, 23 years old. He's been down in high A with the Tri-City Dust Devils. The weird thing, Evan, he was actually scheduled to pitch against Spokane today. And instead he just walked across the field into the other team's dugout, which is what Mike Moustakas did. Super weird that happened. Weird coinky-dink. But yeah, they made a 1-for-1 trade. And after the absolute shellacking that we're going to talk about later, Mike Moustakas is off the roster. First veteran, expiring contract. He's gone, Evan. And this is kind of a bit of a surprising move, I would say, for a lot of Rockies fans.
Honestly, surprising
in the fact that they did something.
In the fact that the Rockies actually did it. because we know how the Rockies tend to operate, which is that allegedly they're supposed to trade these veterans for prospects, and then they never actually do it. And so honestly, this worked out pretty much exactly how you would want it to work out, where you sign Mike Moustakas, who's looking to prove he's still got a little bit left in the tank for vet minimum. So he's been playing for very cheap this year. He puts up, adequate numbers. He was hitting 270, 360, 435 with 4 home runs, 17 RBIs, 21 runs scored, and 0.4 wins above replacement per Baseball Reference. And then you trade him along for a young prospect of really any kind. The voice crack. So the fact that we really got anything for Mike Moustakas, and the fact that we traded him at all is I think a positive move. And a lot of people are going, oh, well, I can't believe, what was even the point of trading Moustakas, of signing Moustakas at the beginning? This was the point. And yes, unfortunately, he did take away some at bats and some playing time from the younger guys, Alaris Montero, Michael Tolia, especially during this period of time where CJ Cron's been hurt. But he upped his value where, prior to this year, it looked like his career was pretty much done. And he upped his value to the point where we got something for him. And we got, it's not an amazing trade. Connor Van Scoyoc is a 23-year-old high A starting pitcher. Very much fits into the Rockies starting pitcher mold of a soft tossing sinker baller with a cutter and a curveball as his secondary pitches. But he's still fairly young. He's only 23 years old. And he's having a pretty good season so far with the Tri-City Dust Devils. And has had, for the most part, an okay minor league career so far. Arizona Fall League last year, he didn't do so great. But with Inland Empire in low A back in 2022, had a really solid year. And then this year he's having a good year where he's got an ERA of 2.76 in 11 starts and 62 innings and a decent number of strikeouts, 56 strikeouts and only 6 home runs. This is a decent prospect. He's not, top 30. He's not really going to knock the doors off or anything like that. But in exchange for, the 34-year-old, almost 35-year-old Mike Moustakas, who we signed in an incredibly low-risk deal, this works out. This is good.
Yeah. And I think it's surprising because you hear what the Rockies kept talking about, how much they loved Moustakas in the clubhouse and his influence, mentorship to the young players, and that value he brings as a clubhouse guy. And it seems in the past, the Rockies' MO, if they have a really good clubhouse guy, they're going to keep him around no matter what. And so it's surprising because I like Moose. And we've talked about that. For the role he was to play, he did pretty good and put up some okay numbers in limited playing time. And it's kind of sad to see him go because I like Moose, wanted to see more of him. But it is that perfect move of, okay, they're actually moving on from this veteran that they loved in the clubhouse who was putting up okay numbers, and they move him for a depth piece that maybe they can get something for him or get something out of this young kid in the future, building up some depth, see how he does progressing wise. But it's a good move, and you hope then maybe, is this a move that kind of indicative of what the Rockies are willing to do now as we grow closer to the trade deadline in a little over a month, on August 1st, the trade deadline.
Yeah, and it really does. It's a bummer to lose the really good clubhouse influence that Moose has, but that doesn't mean he hasn't had an impact over this just a little under half the season that he's been with the team. And this works out for a lot of different ways, where that Moustakas, in going to the Angels, he fills a position of need for them, especially at first base right now. And the Angels are surprisingly good this year, I think, better than a lot of people expected. So now he gets a chance to contend again at the tail end of his career, something that he wasn't getting here. And then you can see indicative of what this does for the Rockies roster in the move that the Rockies made immediately after, which was that they are calling up Michael Tolia.
And there's a lot of falling dominoes that the Rockies benefit from moving a guy like Moustakas. Plus, it's a nice thing he gets to kind of go home back to California. I think he's from Southern California, something like that. He's a California kid like everybody else. And so he gets to go play, back home in a way. And then this opens up more opportunities for the Rockies to have, Montero might get a little bit more time. You can keep Nolan Jones in the lineup more. And, hopefully Tolia can get some more action as you potentially have more of your, guys coming off the injured list like Chris Bryant and CJ Cron. And we can kind of pivot to that real quick of what do we do with CJ Cron now? He's been dealing with those back spasms for 2 months now, seems like. He's been doing some work down in the Arizona complex in the extended spring training. So hasn't been on an official rehab assignment. So they can kind of hold him off until they feel he's ready, and they're hoping he can avoid having to go do an actual rehab assignment. So they can bring Cron back, but what's the situation? What do you think is happening now with Cron and what the plan is for him?
My guess would be, depending on how the rest of this assignment with the Arizona Complex League goes, what I would do with CJ at least is the goal is to recoup as much trade value for him as you possibly can to try and deal him at the deadline. His contract is up at the end of the year, and he hasn't really been very productive since the All-Star break last season. He was an All-Star in 2022, but then following the All-Star break, he really kind of nosedived in his performance, and that isn't necessarily indicative of who he has as a player. And we also have no idea how long his back has been bothering him, to the point where, like you said, he's been out for 2 months at this point. He's been out for a long time. And what I would do is you continue to have, say, Tolia or Montero play first base, and you start CJ specifically as the DH only. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you start putting him in the field, because CJ's glove is a fairly known quantity at this point. But what you need to see is if his bat is going to recover. And if his bat recovers, then you can do very much the same as you did with Mike Moustakas, where you're gonna trade him, probably not for anything amazing like a top 30 prospect or top 15 prospect, but you can get something for him, for a guy who's 32, 33 years old at the end of his contract, and someone else can get better use of him while we can free up more space to play the young guys.
Yeah. If we can trade CJ Cron, see what value he has, see if that bat can come back even just a bit, and then potentially trade him off to somebody that needs maybe a little bit more of that boost in some aspects, even coming off the bench. Get him, even if it's just maybe a rental pitcher for the rest of the season, just to get you through, and then you can dust your hands clean of that. You have the freed up the money, and then you can address pitching in the off season. But it seems like with Cron, that would be the obvious thing to do. Is we talked about this: get as much playing time as he can to see if he can perform well enough in leading up to the trade deadline, and then see what you can get for him.
Yeah,
because I don't think that CJ Cron's not coming back as a Rocky. We hope. Nothing against him. I love Crony. But that's just not where the team is at this point, because there's pieces they need to move. So guys like Jones, Tolia, and Montero, Coco Montes, some of these younger guys can keep getting playing time, because it seems like the Rockies have kind of accepted their fate of, this season's going to be a crapshoot, and we just need to send our guys out there and see what we've got.
And for CJ, if you don't get trade value for him, then you have to designate him for assignment.
Yeah.
You're going to be eating that money anyway. You have to move on. And, maybe, he accepts a minor league assignment with the Isotopes or something like that, and has the potential to, keep playing for the rest of the year and build up that value so he can sign a contract in free agency or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I love CJ. I think we've both been pretty open about that. We like CJ Cron, but like you said, his future is not with this team, and this team's future is not with him. We've got so many corner infielders in this organization.
Mm-hmm. And you've got a guy like Chris Bryant, who he's probably best suited for a DH role nowadays with all the injuries that keep happening to him. The DH role is then getting crowded even more, where CJ Cron is a DH, Eleris Montero is a DH, Charlie Blackmon, whose hand is broken, is a DH. They've been doing Jurickson Profar as a DH. We've even seen Elias Diaz and Jorge Alfaro as DHs. And so it's getting crowded of, okay, what guys need to be playing more? Well, when Chris Bryant comes back, he needs to be getting the most playing time because we're paying him for that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And even with Chris Bryant, like we have one of those things where if, like, say Montero doesn't work out or something like that, then you may consider moving Bryant to first base because you need right field open for a guy like Nolan Jones. And Bryant's defense in right field has been lacking. He's for all of the time he's played in right field this season, he's put up a negative DRS.
Yeah.
Versus Nolan Jones has a positive DRS.
And first base is a lot easier on the legs, the back. For an older guy like Chris Bryant, that's a better one. So then that takes you of, okay, well then where can we stick Tolia? Well, there's two guys in the outfield that probably need some trading here pretty soon in Jurickson Profar and Randall Grichuk, who decent years. And you see, if you can trade off Mike Moustakas, you can probably get something along the same lines with Profar and Grichuk, where we're not asking for the moon here. We're just opening space and getting some pieces that maybe you can strike gold on.
My concerns for Profar is that his contract combined with his performance are going to make things a little bit more difficult. He has a negative 0.8 WAR according to Baseball Reference. His batting average is only 236. His on base is 315 and his slugging is 380. He does have 6 home runs and 27 RBI, but he's making $7.75 million. I think it's going to be tough to find a suitor for that.
They're going to have to eat some contract.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, they'll have to eat some contract or put in a sweetener of, here's another guy. Here's Eleris Montero. Give us a controllable starter that's decent.
Yeah, something like that. Because I've enjoyed having Jurickson here. I love that he seems to always be in a good mood, always smiling no matter what. That's great, but he should never have been signed for that amount regardless, especially when he was a very late signing in the offseason, and it was pretty clear that no one else really was going for the price tag he was looking for.
Yeah. But out of desperation, we had to pay it because we needed a left fielder after Sean Bouchard's decided to go
exploded.
Muscle buff pants on us with his arm.
It was, yeah. And then what's really funny is that if roles were reversed, we could have seen CJ Cron traded to the Angels. If Cron had been healthy and playing, we might have seen him go back to his old team. Yeah,
it could have been an interesting thing, but no. But I think that comes down to this roster shuffling here in the coming weeks. Rockies seem to be embracing, we got to get more of these young guys playing. Embrace the youth movement finally, as they've slowly incorporated guys, and then slowly start gets kind of pushing off the roster positional guys. I'm a little more hesitant now, and the entire pitching world, there's a couple of those bullpen pieces that we've talked about before, but they need to just move guys off, see what you can get. We're not asking for anything spectacular. We're just be active, be the sellers you're supposed to be, and learn from the mistakes of the past.
Yeah, because nobody on this team is going who we would sell is going to net you a top prospect.
Yeah.
Because the guys that we need to sell are Harold Castro, Jurickson Profar, and CJ Cron at this point. That's not really going to net you anything. But you can get something. And that's what matters at this point. That's the whole point of having all these veterans on expiring contracts. And then we're probably not going to move on from Chuck, and we're definitely not going to be able to move on from Chris Bryant. So those three guys are the guys you really need to focus on. And then, probably Elias Diaz is the guy who's the most valuable. But I see this team doing much what they did with CJ Cron last year of, well, he's our only good player, so we can't trade him.
Yeah, they value him too much, especially with one more year on his contract. They probably want to hold on to that.
Yeah.
Probably going to come back to bite them, but hey.
Well, and for what it's worth, there's not really a whole lot of catching behind Elias that's about ready to go.
Yeah. Talking about, we have Jorge Alfaro.
And for Elias, he is really good with the young pitching staff. And I've said this before. I think I said this last week. Could you imagine if Elias Diaz was 4 years younger? How good we would feel about the catching situation for this team.
Yeah, it'd be in a lot better spot than the Rockies are actually in now with everything. And I think we're going to take a break, Evan, because there's some we got to get into the dirt of it with some specific Angels in the outfield, which a nightmare scenario for everybody.
More like Angels clearing the outfield.
Yes. Those were not angels. They were devils. El Diablo. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and take a quick break here. Stick around with us, and we're going to have a therapy session about Saturday's game against the Angels. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back here on Affected by Altitude. Thanks for sticking with us there through the ads. Evan, anything special happen on Saturday between the Rockies and the Angels? I heard they limited Shohei Ohtani to one hit, so the game must have been pretty good then.
Well, you see, we limited Shohei Ohtani to one hit in 7 at-bats.
Oh. Is that good?
Depends on which team you're rooting for.
Or if you're one of those sickos that just wants to watch the Rockies crash and burn.
That's why I kept watching the game last night, is because I was morbidly curious to see just how bad that game got. And oh boy, it was bad. I think you can arguably call it the worst loss in Rockies history. The Rockies lost to the Angels 25-1. The previous most lopsided loss in Rockies history was it 26-7 against the Chicago Cubs back in 1995, and this beats that out of the park in terms of the difference in runs. Was also the third most lopsided loss in Major League Baseball history. Mm-hmm. The first one being that Texas Rangers versus the Orioles back in, I think it was 2007 or something, where the Rangers put up 30 runs. A lot of other fun history, such as the Rockies are the first team in Major League Baseball history to allow 20 plus runs in only 2 innings.
Or like they're tied for the most up there with teams that haven't done that since before the 20th century.
Yeah, we're talking modern era. This is one of the most brutal beatdowns in MLB history for the modern era, where it was getting compared to, teams from the 1800s that don't exist and haven't existed for over a century at this point. It was bad. They put up 13 runs in the 3rd inning and 8 in the 4th inning. They set franchise records for most runs in a single game and most hits in a single game. They had multiple innings where they batted around. So they batted around in both the 3rd and the 4th. And that 3rd inning was probably the most brutal inning of baseball I've ever watched. They sent 16 batters to the plate. They almost batted around twice in one inning. Scored 13 runs on 10 hits, 4 home runs.
And 3 of those home runs on 3 consecutive pitches.
Back to back to back. It was definitely a low point. I've been a Rockies fan for over 25 years at this point. That Cubs beatdown happened when I was like 4 years old. This one was was the worst. It is the worst Rockies game I've ever watched.
Also, it was, thanks to Brenton Doyle, it avoided being the second worst, I guess the second best shutout victory for a road team in baseball history. But luckily it wasn't a shutout, so yay.
Yeah, and that is the entirety of all of baseball, not just the modern era. That's again going back to the 1800s. That would have been.
There was historical stats for the Rockies last night that were established like 20 years after the Civil War ended. That's how bad it was last night.
And we have Brenton Doyle to thank for making it, instead of being a MLB historically bad game, just a Rockies historically bad game, where he in the bottom of the 8th inning slapped a 426-foot solo home run to put the Rockies on the board. It was the only run the Rockies scored all night. It was bad.
Yeah,
it was real bad.
So then I guess that kind of brings us to our conversation for this segment of, I guess, is this kind of the amalgamation and like just the meshing of everything coming to a head of this is the state of the Colorado Rockies, and that has been the state of the Colorado Rockies for the past 5 years? Or is it like Bud Black, it's just one game out of the ordinary? Because it's a stark contrast from, Friday night they have a incredible come-from-behind victory, hit their first Grand Slam since 2021, thanks to Elias Diaz, win the game. And then the next day they just get clobbered. Hopefully that doesn't happen here on this Sunday that we're recording before the game. But is this who the Rockies are, or is it really just, that's baseball. This is just one of those games, and this isn't who we are, and we don't need to change anything? Or is this really who the team is, who the organization is?
I don't think Bud Black was being entirely honest during his presser yesterday, where he was talking about it's just one game, because he was not happy. He got a little bit at the very beginning of his press conference. People were asking about that. He was definitely a little bit terse with the press, more so than we usually see from him, where, he interrupted them a few times, elevated his voice a little bit. You could tell that last night's loss got to him, even if he said it didn't. And then you can also say, it's one game, one really bad game. But I do think that this game is a microcosm of everything that is wrong with the Rockies, especially this season. Starting pitcher doesn't go more than a handful of innings. We have to go to the bullpen and ask them to take a bunch of the slack, where Noah Davis and Carl Kaufman and Matt Carasidi were basically wheeled out there to be sacrificial lambs just to get the Rockies through the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad for Matt and for Noah, because they both looked just absolutely miserable after their nights were done. And I give props to Carl Kaufman, because Kaufman did a really good job at limiting the bleeding. Kaufman pitched 3 innings, only gave up 1 run, and walked 1 batter. Now, he didn't strike out anybody, fine, but he ate through those innings without making it even worse than it already was, and I will give him props for that. But then we have burned through all of our long relievers to the point where we have to make roster moves today, and then we have the issue of the Rockies, having difficulty getting runs across, where if we had scored more than 1 run, it would have been at least a little more tolerable.
Mm-hmm. If we put up like 6 runs,
it would have been ugly, but we would have been like, that is baseball.
We just couldn't pitch.
But when the Angels were on their 6th at bats, the Rockies had only gone through the order twice.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some decent hits, like Ezekiel Tovar legged out a triple and then was promptly stranded on base. We left a bunch of guys stranded. We were 0 for 3 with runners in scoring position. So the 3 times we had a guy past second base, we didn't get him home, and we left 6 total runners stranded because that 7th hit that we had was the solo home run from Brenton Doyle.
Mm-hmm. It's ugly stuff, and that's kind of highlights that point of the younger guys are doing the best. And I saw somebody tweet this where it's like they don't blame really anybody below assistant GM. So, and I kind of echo that sentiment where I'm not going to blame the players. I'm not going to be mad at them because they're literally doing the best they can. And they go out there and compete. They take it to heart. They're as frustrated probably as you and I are, and all the Rockies fans are. Nobody likes to lose in the fashion the Rockies have over the past week and a half. Because they were stomped on that road trip after they left Boston. We talked about them getting just beat up by the whatchamacallem, the Braves, and as well as the Reds and everything. So it's just been ugly for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's been rough. And so then you come into that and it's awful. And so it's kind of the blame kind of falls on who's at the top of the totem pole, making the decisions, building the team, and providing the resources for the team to get better. Yeah,
and you look at some of the comments from the guys like Brenton Doyle. Doyle and Gritch had that weird botched play where the ball dropped right between them, and Doyle had to get asked. This is a rookie, a young guy in his first MLB season, having to get asked, how do you feel about getting booed by your own fans at home? That's a tough question to ask a rookie. And for what it's worth, he answered it with grace, where he was like, we deserved it. We needed to do better. Mm-hmm. And that's a very mature response for Brenton. But I feel bad that he had to even answer that in the first place, because we are at a point where the Rockies are being resoundingly booed in their own ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
In front of a sellout crowd last night,
who were there to watch 2 generational, incredible, historic players in MLB. And the thing that makes it difficult is, honestly, the players shouldn't be the ones that are having to answer these questions. Even Bud Black shouldn't be having to always be the one answering these questions. There's 2 guys at the top, 3 guys at the top that should be the ones subject to these questions. No, even at the end of the season, but they haven't had a press conference since Chris Bryant, and that wasn't really that much of a press conference. It was just, hey, Chris, we're glad you're here. All right, talk to him.
Yeah. You go, where is Bill Schmidt? Where is Dick Monfort? Dick Monfort, who will inevitably send out a letter to the season ticket holders like he did last year and the year before and the year before, going, oh, this year was bad, but next year will be better, we promise. And then they won't do anything to address glaring needs. You have Bill Schmidt, who, when asked about, hey, this team desperately needed starting pitching, and you said that we were going to focus on starting pitching in the offseason, what happened? And his response was, well, we tried.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried very hard to wait out Bill Schmidt, give him a couple years, see how he does. But all of the players that he has signed, I saw the statistic today, have a net negative 3.1 wins above replacement. The moves he has made have not made this team better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the one that was kind of doing better were brought in by Jeff Bridich. Elias Diaz, CJ Cron, no, never mind, not any of those pitchers. No, it's Daniel Bard. Yeah, it's just not working. Nothing is working with this team.
And this is a team that touts itself as, oh, we're not going to make the big splashy moves because we're a draft and develop team. It's like Bill Schmidt had been in charge of the draft for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And even as the GM, though he's not necessarily in charge of the draft, he's still pretty much in charge of the draft. And none of the guys that he's drafted as the GM are anywhere close to big league ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like most of those guys are still a couple years away. And so we don't know what he's doing now. Like, yeah, he's trying to put some band-aids on things. And no, Brent Suter looks like a good bullpen piece, but now he's injured, and the cracks of the bullpen overuse is showing now. And then it's just kind of sitting on the hands of, well, we tried. I don't know where the power is, but we tried. The lack of accountability for these guys I think is one of the more frustrating things for all the fans in Colorado, and I'm sure even media people. Where are they to answer these questions of what's going on with the team, instead of coming up with excuses of we just need to play better. Oh, everybody's injured. We're better than this. We just need to play better.
And inevitably, sometime during the off season, Dick Monfort will put his foot in his mouth somehow.
Yeah.
Or Bill Schmidt. We'll see very little of them this season. They won't have an end of season presser because they just don't do that anymore. I'm trying to be diplomatic here, but they hide. While guys like Bud Black say whatever you want about Bud Black, I'm at the point where I don't necessarily think he's the right man for the job anymore with this team. But he is the one who gets thrown to the wolves after every game, like last night, after every bad game, after every bad performance, to answer these questions that should not always be his responsibility to answer.
Yeah, and like when we do hear from Bill Schmidt or Dick Monfort, it's in those random situations. Maybe Patrick Saunders talked to him while just standing there at Coors Field, on the field, things like that. And those are always very directed conversations, which are fine. But that's where we get we tried, and I don't know where the power is. Those kind of things where it's you catch them in the weird situations. Whereas you look at the Cardinals, their GM, strictly there. The Cardinals are in a rough place. I think he was in having his little conference there in the dugout and telling people like changes are coming. Not necessarily a huge tear down rebuild, but there's going to be changes coming, and we'll see what those are.
And say what you want about Bud Black, you can even compare him to the Cardinals situation, where he's not going up there and throwing specific players under the bus, like Cardinals manager Ole Marmol has been doing with these rough patches for the Cardinals this year.
Yeah, it's just a rough situation, and that's just where Rockies baseball is right now, where it feels stuck, where they're just doing the same things over and over again. It's not working, but there's really no change on the horizon that we can foresee that's going to drastically turn this franchise around. You can do your little moves of, we'll send off Moustakas. The pitcher you bring in fits right into the mold of every single other pitcher you bring in that's not having success at the big league level. You can look around, you look at the Reds, they bring up their young prospects, and those guys are electric. They're hitting the ground running, doing incredible things. And we look over at the Rockies, and yes, our prospects have that potential, but they get to the big league level and they just kind of putter along, and they'll have their highlights here and there, but it's still overall they struggle. And the team's like, well, they just need to keep playing and getting some reps. But then you look at Ellie De La Cruz with the Reds, dude's hitting for the cycle a couple weeks into his time in the big leagues, doing incredible things every night, and that team has turned its head and it's leading the National League Central, whereas we're comfortably at the bottom of our division.
Yeah, or the Arizona Diamondbacks, who fully committed to a rebuild that was ugly for a couple years. They lost over 100 games last year, and now they're racing with the Dodgers for first place in the division.
The Baltimore Orioles as well. They committed to their youngsters while bringing in veteran complementary pieces. They're competing out there in the American League East, which is usually a pretty tough division. And so you can look around the league for different examples of how teams are doing things and progressing, minus the Oakland A's. And the Rockies are just stagnant. And we talked about this before. They're still kind of operating like they're a team in the 90s or even the 80s.
And you bring up the A's, and it's like, what is worse? A team that is really, really bad, but they claim that they are trying, like the Rockies, or a team that is really, really bad, and they're obviously not trying, like the A's?
Mm-hmm. It's a very deep question for you for you listeners and viewers to think about. But I think to bring this conversation to a close, it's just we've just been broken this season. What an awful way to celebrate 30th anniversary of the Rockies. But it also, in a way, the perfect way to celebrate it is with the team doing historically bad things, especially on a night when they celebrated the Denver Bears minor league team in their City Connects. They're stuck in. There's no evolution that we're seeing exactly, or rapid evolution to compete in the modern game of baseball. And this season's breaking a lot of people. It's breaking a lot of fans. If the Nolan Arenado trade hadn't done that already, and it's even us who are diehards, it gets tough. Like, I can't watch the games, but I usually listen to them on the radio, or I'll check in. I'll follow on the MLB app. Even then, I'm like, I really don't want to listen to them tonight. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to watch a movie.
To the point where you feel bad for Drew, for Jack, for Jerry, for Huey and Spilly, who have to somehow fill airtime while this team is just being bludgeoned to death.
Mm-hmm. And like we talked about with last week with the Nuggets and the Avalanche, even the Denver Broncos, in the sports totem pole, the people of Denver don't care about the Rockies anymore, and they want to. I firmly in my heart, people in Colorado, they want to care about the Rockies. We saw that in Rocktober years. This city, the state, and Denver especially, are baseball towns, baseball cities, and they deserve so much better. Seeing people on Twitter last night of these beautiful pictures of Coors Field and all the fans there, and with captions like, this place is wonderful, it could be so great, but the team is so awful in the organization that I don't want to come back. I don't want to spend $200 to have me and my family there at the field to watch games like that against the Angels. If you're really in depth following the team and there for more than just a good time partying and drinking with your buddies.
Yeah. I don't know what else we can really say about it. The bad night, bad season,
bad team. So, Mr. Monfort, if you ever listen to this, which I know you won't, but please look deep in the mirror and figure out how you can make this team better, improve them, because the people of Denver, this is our team. It's not his team. He treats it like his, and that's the way he runs it. But the sports teams, they're not for the owners. They're for the people, for the city. You just happen to fund it because you love it too and want to make money. But it belongs to the people, and the people deserve better. I've never watched Ted Lasso, but I've seen the clip of the one lady talking about this type of thing. Rockies baseball means a lot to a lot of us, and it hurts to see it in this state because we love those players. We love the team. We love baseball. But when all is said and done, we're never going to be celebrating and building a statue to Dick Monfort. We're not going to stick his initials up in the rafters. His legacy is going to be, what did he do with the team? Not the legacy he wants of building up the stadium and McGregor Square and all this stuff and how much money he made. What matters is, did you ever win a division title? Did you ever win a World Series? That type of thing, if that makes sense. We deserve better, Evan.
The Atlanta Braves have won the National League West. The Colorado Rockies have not.
Let that sink in, folks. Redo the divisions again. Anyways, we're going to take one last quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to just kind of touch around the league, some quick news before we close this out. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Do. Hello, everybody, and welcome back here to Affected by Altitude. To close this out, just kind of wrap up around the league, touch on things. All-star voting, Evan, coming up this coming week. We will learn the winning starters and as well as the pitchers and reserves next Sunday. So we're on watch for what Rocky gets the designation. Seems that the odds would be either Ryan McMahon or Elias Diaz. I'm leaning towards Diaz just because he's kind of had a more fanned out, lengthier, I guess, time of success here in this first half.
Seemed like he did pretty good in fan voting. He was like the third or fourth most voted for catcher in the National League. Unfortunately, he lost out to
Sean Murphy and Will Smith.
Sean Murphy and Will Smith. Whereas Ryan McMahon didn't even crack the top 10, which is crazy to me because the top vote getter was Nolan Arenado, who statistically is having a worse season than McMahon in a lot of different ways. But that's the problem with the fan vote is it's always going to be that name recognition. And, the Cardinals are bad, but have a perennial all-star in Nolan Arenado versus the Rockies are bad. And our guys don't really have that sort of name brand power that a lot of other guys are going to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We don't have, an entire country of Canadians voting in all their Blue Jays over in the National League. Instead, we don't have those household names, the days of Tulo and Cargo and Charlie Blackmon, even Arenado, who are like, these are the go-to national popular guys that, are going to do well in the voting. Rockies don't have that guy anymore. And we know the all-star voting's first and foremost popularity contest voting. And we usually have to rely on the players' votes and stuff now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unfortunate because then it really sends home that message of your vote doesn't count in the all-star vote.
But what's crazy is like how much success helps, because the Texas Rangers, who really kind of struggled last year after really buying in and trying to bring in a lot of superstars, this year they had like 5 guys who were all in the top voting for their team, and they're doing really good. So they have Jonah Heim at catcher, Marcus Semien at second base, Corey Seager at short, Josh Jung at third, and Adolis Garcia in the outfield. And the Rangers are not a huge market team. They're having a good season, and thus they're getting recognition for their players. Versus you have the Rockies, who are terrible, despite having a couple of players who are having really good years. And we are stuck having to hope that maybe we'll get lucky and have more than one guy make the cut.
This would make 3 years in a row we've only had one guy in the All-Star game.
And that's after the
All-Star season
institution of making it mandatory that every team has to have one player.
Yeah. So longer gone are the days. Was it 2019? Was that when the Rockies had 3 or 4?
I think it was 2018.
Yeah, it was one of those years. It was like even 2017 they had like 3 or 4.
27 we had multiples. 2018 we had multiples. We had that year where it was Trevor Story, Nolan Arenado, David Dahl, and Charlie Blackmon.
Yeah. So we're far removed from those days. So we'll see. I'm pretty sure none of the pitchers will make it. Maybe we'll get lucky with a reliever, but it seems like Elias Diaz, that's going to be my safe bet.
I think it's not impossible for one of our relievers to make it. It's going to be, if it is a reliever, it's going to be Suter, Bird, or Lawrence. But no, it's with all likelihood, it's going to be Elias Diaz as like the backup or third string catcher or something.
Yeah, works for me. He would be the first all-star catcher for the Rockies
ever.
So, hey, we got that to root for. Yeah, so that's fan voting. That's all-star voting. We'll learn all this next Sunday evening, so it probably won't even show up in the podcast. But know that we are rooting for our guys. Going up around the league, Evan, I guess, is there anything you want to touch on with anything that's been sticking out to you lately with MLB news and just what's going on, what teams are catching your eye?
The Reds having that surge was absolutely crazy. They won 11 games in a row, I think.
12 games in a row.
They won 12 in a row. Yeah, that huge turnaround, especially from last year where the Reds were really bad and you had all the bad press from the owner. Where this year they've really got they got Joey Votto back, and he's been crushing it ever since he got back. What a way to return from the injured list than against the scuffling Colorado Rockies. In the midst of what was to be an 8-game losing streak. Joey Votto looks as good as he has, and then they've got all these other guys. Ellie De La Cruz has looked amazing. He's been really cool, and it's crazy how gigantic he is and how fast he is.
Yeah,
the Marlins being pretty good is also another surprise.
And they have a first-year manager, Skip Schumacher, leading them down there. And the crazy part is that Sandy Alcantara is not having a great year after winning the Cy Young Award last season. But you look at the team, Luis Arraez is battling to hit over 400. He's not the MVP, by the way. Stop bringing up that argument. You have that whole team surging, and they're doing pretty good. Battling for that wild card probably. And they're in that weird amalgamation of young starters and everything. Their young core mixed in with some veterans to kind of boost you up. It seems these teams that are moving towards the youth movement are a lot more exciting than, say, the San Diego Padres, who spent all that money and they're just crashing into the earth.
Oh, at least it gives me something to smile about. Well, and it's, who set the example of the youth movement is the Braves, where they got all of their young guys who continue to do amazing. They keep bringing up young guys, and then they supplement it with the veterans that they need. And, the Braves are, of course, one of the best teams in the league this year.
Yeah, and it's not like they're not like the Rays level where the Rays are just constantly cycling through guys, but that's just because they don't want to pay that much money. So they can do everything they do on a cheap budget and still be really good because of their development and everything. But then the Atlanta Braves, I think, are more kind of that more modern way of how you can build a contender is you've got all these young guys, you develop them well, you pay to keep them around, and then you make trades to bring in stars, you sign your stars. And it's just a good mixture of everything.
And they don't even really break the bank to do it. A lot of their younger guys are on really team-friendly deals. Signed when they're still rookies or in their second year. Speaking of Rockies, lock down Ezekiel Tovar now. Thank you.
Yeah. Or at least buy out those arbitration years. So, but they're kind of that youth movement around baseball. Those are the teams I think that are the exciting ones because we're seeing the talent instead of seeing, oh, this guy's going to be with the team for 11 years. Oh, no, he's struggling in his first season. They're stuck with him for 10 more years after that type of thing.
Yep.
Whereas the youngsters, they come in, they have their either they have their hot flash in the pan. Hey, that was exciting. Or they do that, and then they get to have the continued success while still being young.
And it's the same as look at the Rangers again. They're a really good example of this year a mix of homegrown young talent, where you've got Josh Jung, who is a candidate for Rookie of the Year in the American League at third base. You've got Lowe at first base, who's being really solid. You have guys like Adolis Garcia, Leody Taveras, Ezekiel Duran, rounding out that. And then you mix that with a group of very talented veterans in Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, John Gray.
Yeah. The work the Rangers did to address their starting rotation even without Jacob deGrom in that rotation, they're still getting really good performances out of Nathan Eovaldi,
Eovaldi's been amazing.
and John Gray, who's finally having like that breakout season the Rockies knew that he could have, but he just could never do it in Colorado for reasons. But seeing him put it together is awesome. You got like Andrew Haney and some of their other guys putting together a strong rotation mixed in with a phenomenal offense. One of the best offenses in baseball this season, putting up runs and everything. Recipe for success for them. And they went for it, and it's kind of paying off finally. And they have the perfect guy at the helm in Bruce Bochy to manage the club.
Bochy is the perfect manager for this team, where and Bochy is really interesting because Bochy is a combination of your old curmudgeon, old guy manager, where you watch him hobble as fast as he can out there to go scream at an umpire. But then he is also a guy who meshes really well with the young talent on the team, who can identify with and talk to and get the best results out of his young guys. And you don't really see a lot of that from the really, really old managers. You don't get that out of necessarily Bud Black. You don't get that out of Terry Francona sometimes, or Buck Showalter in New York. But Bochy does it. And he's a good manager for a good team. But that was a great signing by Texas to get him out of retirement.
Yeah, and they're doing good. They're an exciting team. It's fun to see that American League West just be competitive, with the Angels battling
four out of 5 of them.
Yeah, 4 out of 5 ain't bad. And seeing Seattle still trying to stay in it and figure out how they can take that next step. The Angels in there, Astros are going to do their thing as always, and then have the Rangers in there. Baseball's better when everybody's trying, unless you're the Oakland A's. Yeah, looking at you, Las Vegas Athletics. Ugh, what a mess. Have you watched the London series at all this weekend between the Cardinals and the Cubbies?
Not a ton. I've caught a little bit of it. Looks like a lot of fun.
My one complaint with it is, why didn't we just get the British broadcasters? Like, I don't care what John Schmaltz has to say or Alex Rodriguez have to say about this game in London. I don't like listening to them in the first place. But I saw the clip of the British broadcast of when I think it was Swanson hit a home run or whatever. And I was like, man, this British guy, like, why aren't we listening to him? They're in London.
Yeah,
just let them do it.
They showed the new Great Britain hats for the national team with the lion on them. Really cool. Did
they actually pay for a graphic designer?
I sure hope so.
Great Britain baseball team.
Oh, that was bad. It's about as bad as the Pittsburgh Pirates City Connects.
Oh yeah, I know a lot of people hate on the Rockies ones. I like the Rockies ones because they are unique and like they're different. Instead of a lot of these other teams, it's just bland, one color with this kind of ugly block lettering across the front.
PGH.
Yeah. Like even the Rangers, I don't like the Rangers Peagles one, but at least they were going for something.
I like the Rangers ones. I bought one actually. I have a John Gray Ranger City Connect jersey. I think it's a really good love letter to the history of baseball in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
And that's what I thought is when it's just going for something to like just kind of be unique. Whereas the ones this year, a lot of them have just been bland single color. Here's a couple of things on it. Here you go. Whereas that's why I like the Rockies one, because it's unique and like it's different.
The Pirates ones would be better if you look really close. There's a lot of neat little details on there, but you have to be looking close so they don't really show up on TV or in photos very well.
Yeah.
It just looks like a yellow jersey that says on it.
Yeah, so City Connects are still weird. But I don't care what people say. I love the Rockies ones.
I think the Rockies one's the best ones.
Even the hat has grown on me. Like I wear that hat more than all my other hats.
I agree. I didn't love the hat at first, but now I like the hat.
It's grown. It's grown on you. But
I got a hat to supplement it. That it's the solid City Connect green, and then it has the ROX patch, like the yellow patch on the front. That's a good hat.
Not too shabby. But yeah, so that's kind of just happenings around MLB and everything. But we're always paying attention. Also, does anybody care about Home Run Derby X at all still? Yeah, that's about where I'm at. I watched it once last year, and I'm like, this is stupid. And then I turned it off because it was incredibly boring. I do not care about watching a social media influencer or local celebrity hitting quote-unquote home runs.
Yeah, that's what the celebrity softball game is for during the All-Star break.
Yeah.
And that can be pretty fun. Like I went to the celebrity softball game in 2021 when the Rockies hosted. Whole lot of fun. Vinny Castilla out there. Had some guys, had Von Miller. That was fun, but I don't need to watch a home run derby of TikTokers and Twitter influencers and whatever.
Yeah.
I want to watch the actual home run derby.
Yeah. Anyways, I think it's going to bring you to a close here, Evan. Kind of lackluster, but hey, that's just kind of what's going on around MLB, what we're paying attention to.
I'm glad we sandwiched all the negativity right in the middle.
Yeah, a nice tasty sandwich. That's the bologna in the sandwich.
It tastes like something, that's for sure.
But that's going to do it here for Affected by Altitude. As always, we appreciate you tuning in and joining along with us through this crazy ride that is the Colorado Rockies season. Evan, where can the folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Evan_Lang27. I would love to hear from you. You can also catch me writing up the Thursday Rock Piles and Thursday game coverage on Purple Row. That's www.purplerow.com. Lots of great content creators writing amazing things on Purple Row. Skyler, I really, really, really liked your tribute to George Frazier from this most recent Wednesday. That was a very good piece.
Oh, thank you. And if you weren't recalled, former Rockies broadcaster George Frazier passed away this past week, so we paid tribute to him over on Purple Row, as well as on the internets.
You can also hit us up on the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Twitter account. It's at Rocky Mountain Rooftop, ROCKYMTN Rooftop. And Skyler, where can we hear from you?
You can always find me over at Twitter at Cylon_crowd, sharing jokes and memes and the occasional Rockies analysis. Also, you can follow us at Every Rocky Ever. We just had a new episode this past week going over Justin Morneau in a Rockies uniform. A lot of fun talking about one of our other favorite Canadians that played for the Rockies. Also the only other number 33 since Larry Walker.
Who got the blessing from Larry to wear it because they're both Canadians.
Indeed. But yeah, so, and as always, Wednesday Rock Piles over at purplerow.com. Go check us out. So that'll do it here for Affected by Altitude. Until next time, I'm Skyler. That's Evan. Hit him with it, Evan.
Farewell. I don't want to live on this planet anymore.